Hey everybody, welcome to SED 500-700, our Module 6. We are looking at wrapping up everything that we've learned so far, and we're going to start with one of my favorite quotes from Rita Pearson. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they possibly can be. This is so true for our students with severe disabilities, who quite often people give up and decide they're not going to learn. They're never going to learn something, and we know that's just fundamentally and absolutely untrue. When I'm looking at working with my son Dan, for example, he's 17, going on 18 now, and we are still working on continence issues. We're still working on independence and dressing and eating and in using a communication system. And we continue to work on that every day and champion for him to be able to do those things in our village that supports Dan. It is absolutely something that we believe can happen and we will continue to work on. And we need to champion for our students when people say they will never master a concept, they will never access books, they will never learn to read or to enjoy literature. They absolutely can, because every child deserves that champion who will continue to work towards them. So how do we do that? How do we become that champion for our students? Hopefully by using our course learning objectives. We know that we've so far examined the characteristics of individual with significant or severe disabilities, and we've started to prioritize that research-based instructional practices. We've been comparing and contrasting those family issues that we've looked at, including parent rights and involvement, multicultural issues, what to do when students come from backgrounds that are different than our own, and how we can help advocate for children and help families be advocates for their child. We're also analyzing research-based practices as we've looked at all the different modules. We've looked at assessment and instruction practices and assistive technology, alternate communication systems, and we're just starting to really get a feel for those as we look at P through 12 and transition experiences for people with disabilities through adulthood. We're also really focusing on the importance of understanding and having strategies to support inclusive education for students. And the reason that we do that is because we understand everything that Rita has taught us. The middle quote we just talked about as we on the first slide, slide. But the beginning and end of what Rita says is equally powerful. How powerful would our world be if we had kids not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? A lot of our students should have and need peers that understand them, understand their learning needs, and are their champion, who will be their friend from their P through 12 through adult experiences, who will understand what it takes to provide that appropriate support so that their friends can access the same activities. Is this job tough? You betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We are educators. We are born to make a difference. We know that is so true. Our job might not be simple, but like Rita says, it's not impossible. We might have tried 50 best practices, 50 research-based practices, and not had success. And the key to a great educator is that we're going to try the 50 first, or we're going to go back to the third and try that again, because we know that we can make a difference when we just find the right tools together. Our ultimate goal when we're working with students with disabilities is to provide an inclusive learning environment. Is this appropriate for every student every day, all the time? Not always, but it's what we need to be working towards. We do not want an exclusive or separate learning opportunity for our kids, because there is no great learning when we're without our peers all the time. We need to have access to our friends. We might learn separately to master a foundational skill, and then we need to go into an inclusive classroom in the middle of our peers, not integrated, not sitting over in our accessible chairs, not sitting in a corner with a paraprofessional between ourselves and our peers, but in the middle of our group, being taught by both a general education and a special education teacher who understand what it takes to provide accommodations and modifications to curriculum so everyone can learn all the time together. In order to do that, we need to teach our colleagues and students that equality is not always what happens in a classroom. We're looking for justice, appropriate accommodation, so that everyone can see and enjoy the game together. When we're going to participate in the game, we're going to give our kids more things sometimes so that they can access it, and we need everyone to understand that that is what fairness is all about. I love Rick LaVoie's quote, "Fair doesn't mean giving every child the same thing. It means giving every child what they need." And in our house, this is especially true with Dan and our daughters. Our daughters understand, and as hard as it is for a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old to understand, Dan gets different stuff. So Dan gets Dr. Pepper and marshmallows every morning to take his medicine. And boy, would everybody love to have marshmallows and Dr. Pepper for breakfast? You betcha. But they understand that Dr. Pepper and marshmallows are access for Dan to having a seizure-free day and having a day with increased concentration through his medication to help him see the game. And they get that and want that for Dan. So Dan has marshmallows and Dr. Pepper, and they eat their cereal, and then Dan joins in and has his Lucky Charms when he's done with his medicine. But we get it. Fair isn't having the same thing, it's having what we need. So when we look at what we know about what our kids need, we know they do not need to be separated from the pack, but they rather need to be part of the pack. And they need to have the ability to access their environment. So they need to be able to have an accessible way to get up into the show with their friends. When we're looking at access, that could include them being able to use a ramp to get up with their friends, using accessible materials, but everybody gets to have what they need. So let's look at what we're going to be doing in this module. In this module, you're going to be creating a presentation that explains to either colleagues or parents or someone in the community an issue that is relevant to students with severe disabilities. So I've given you some examples of appropriate topics at the bottom, and it could be something like understanding autism or understanding Fragile X syndrome, or inclusive practices in the general education classroom for students with severe disabilities. You could look at a topic like self-determination or using adaptive technology devices. You could look at a specific model like the multidisciplinary team model. You could look at waiver programs, or really any issue that you know is crucial to the inclusion of students with severe disabilities. In your presentation, and it could be a PowerPoint, a Google slide, it could be a Prezi, or any other presentation program out there that will let everyone access the information, you're going to give an overview of the topic, including a brief review of the literature and 3 professional resources. So this could include the IRIS modules, MAST modules, the Ocali modules, information in our textbook, any of the articles that we've reviewed so far. You're going to share those and make sure that you're using APA references. That can be, in the notes section of your PowerPoint or in a different way, just as long as I can access it in the presentation. And then you're going to provide some practical applications of that topic. So practical applications are going to be examples that help people understand how that topic pertains in their world. So in a classroom, at home. Then you're going to offer some helpful hints of how somebody could go out today and put what you've taught into practice. So how could I support somebody with Fragile X syndrome? How can I use adaptive technology devices in the classroom? How could I start using a multidisciplinary team approach? Then you're going to have a final slide that gives people some resources and references. Make those helpful, please. If you're listing a website or a reference, give a 1 or 2 sentence description of what they will find there. And then make sure that you go back and record your presentation, just like you've seen all of these presentations that I've done. I recorded some of them using the PowerPoint feature for record and some of them using Screencast-O-Matic. So your choice, just as long as you record it so we can hear you talking and explaining the topic. And that's what you need to do for your final presentation. If you've got questions, please ask them in the questions discussion board. Take some time to check your grades, make sure you understand, and ask questions through email. And if you're taking SED 535 or 735, make sure that you save your book because we're using the same one. Happy learning this week!